Hi students, I'm Dr. Anandhi. Welcome to my channel Make Biology Simple. So in today's video, we are going to see the carbohydrates chapters and important classification and the nomenclature for the carbohydrates. So in last class, we have seen about the introduction and the basics naming about the carbohydrates and again some part of classification we have completed. Today we are going to see the basic detailed about the classification of the carbohydrates. When we talk about the classification of carbohydrates based on the number of carbon groups, it is divided into trioses means we have 3 carbons, tetroses means 4 carbon, pentoses means 5 carbon, hexoses means 6 carbon, heptoses means 7 carbon. So this is the basic types of classification have been categorized based on the number of carbon groups. So since we know the carbohydrates are nothing but sugars, so this is a common name, and trioses is based on the number of carbon groups. And then again in the carbohydrate we have two types of sugars. One is aldo sugar, the another one is keto sugar based on the functional group it has. So aldo means it contains aldehyde group, keto means it contains keto groups. So those type of sugars we called as aldoses and ketoses. So coming to the trioses, so in the trioses, if it is belong to aldoses, we call it as glyceraldehyde, and if it is belong to the keto, we call it as dihydroxyacetone. So coming to 4 carbon, we call it as erythrose. If aldehyde is a functional group, erythrulose as a keto sugar. So in pentoses, ribose, xylose. These are the two aldo sugars coming under pentose, and then ribuloses and xylulose for the keto pentoses. And then coming to hexoses, glucose and galactose and mannose. One more carbohydrate is there, monosaccharide is there. It's called glucose, galactose, mannose. All are belong to the aldose groups, and fructose alone belong to the keto groups. 7 carbon containing aldo group we call it as glucoheptose, and then if it is a keto we call it as pseudoheptulose. So these are the basic classification of monosaccharides. So we are seeing only the monosaccharides starting from 3 carbon to 7 carbon sugars, and also along with that we have seen what are aldose sugars and ketose sugar examples. So now we are moving to that. What is the basic function? That means importance of this existing carbohydrates or monosaccharides in our system. So glyceraldehyde and dihydroxyacetone, this we don't have in the form of any sugar, but these are the intermediates of the carbohydrate metabolism. So this will be, you are able to see these two components in the glycolysis pathway and the first half of the glycolysis pathway. So glucose 6 carbon is broken down to 3 carbon. So the 3 carbon is nothing but glyceraldehyde, and one more is tricarbon. So 3 plus 3 will give 6 carbon. So this is how the glucose has been hydrolyzed, or it is getting lysed. And this glyceraldehyde and dihydroxyacetone are also the precursors for the glycerol. What is glycerol means? This is a basic skeleton for the formation of the lipid, that means fatty acids. And then coming to the tetrose, what is the importance mean? These are also intermediates of carbohydrate metabolism. So where this will come means you can expect these erythrose formation in the HMP pathway, that is hexose monophosphate pathway, or we call it as pentose phosphate pathway. So these are this is the importance of the erythrose. Coming to ribose, that means pentose. This ribose is very important structural component of the nucleic acid, say for example RNA and DNA. And RNA is ribose, DNA is having deoxyribose, but the sugar is same, only the second carbon of the ribose where the hydrogen is removed. So that, oxygen is removed. That is called deoxyribose. Deoxyribose is a basic skeletal for the attachment of bases in the RNA, and deoxyribose is the basic sugar which is required for the attachment of the bases in the DNA. And apart from this, DNA ribose is also involved in the coenzyme synthesizer. And say for example FAD, NAD, there also you can expect this ribose. What about the glucose? Glucose is, we all know, glucose is the main sugar of the body, where the body system or the system can utilize for the energy purpose. The ATP production is first dependent only from the carbohydrate, and that too from the glucose. So energy producing carbohydrate or monosaccharide of what we asked, it is nothing but glucose. And then fructose. This is also another monosaccharide, but it's a ketose sugar. So it is converted into glucose and utilized by the body. For examples, when you consume, in the case of milk and or lactose, you have glucose and fructose. So this fructose will be converted into again glucose and then utilized in our body. And we have a specific metabolism called fructose metabolism, because our system can utilize only glucose for the energy purpose. That means involved in the glycolysis pathway, carbohydrate metabolism. Then suppose if fructose is there in our system, it will convert fructose to glucose. So there is an isomerization happen in fructose, that is converted to glucose, and we got a glucose finally. This glucose and thereafter utilized by the body as usual by the process called glycolysis. And one more is there, galactose. So, so for the fructose, I told you lactose, it's not lactose, it's a sucrose, that is your sugar, table sugar containing fructose. So galactose is the one which is present in the milk in the form of glucose and galactose. So galactose will be converted from the milk sugar in the form of glucose and galactose, and that galactose again we have a specific metabolism in our body called galactose metabolism, that once again converted to glucose and utilized in our body. So this is also synthesized in the mammary gland as well as in the milk. And final one more monosaccharide belongs to the hexose group is mannose. So mannose is involved in the building up of or synthesis of glycoproteins and glycolipids. These are the very important signal transduction proteins, or they are also involved in the cell wall preparation. So all these are very important for the constituents or the building up of the protein in our body. So this is how the monosaccharides are useful in our body. So the next one is oligosaccharides. So if you contain 2 to more than 10 monosaccharides, then we have to call that type of sugar as a oligosaccharides. How they are combined means they combine with a specific bond called glycosidic bond with the removal of water. When two sugars are combined, a molecule of water is removed and they form a glycosidic bond. This is how the glucose are combined and it is produced. And hydrolysis, you can other way you can term this oligosaccharide as an hydrolysis of a sugar, for example starch or glycogen. If the primary product will be mostly 2 to 10 molecules of simple sugar units. So those units which is got from the complex carbohydrates also we termed as a oligosaccharides, and they can be subdivided in the number of monosaccharides. If you have two monosaccharides, we call di. If you have three monosaccharides, we call it trisaccharides. If it is four, we call it as tetrasaccharide. If it is five, it is called pentasaccharides. So again, in the subunits based on the present in the oligosaccharides, we term like this. And in the coming to the classification of oligosaccharides, just now I told you disaccharide means it contains two monosaccharides. Example, in the case of maltose, we have glucose plus glucose. Two molecules of glucose combined with the bond called glycosidic bond and form the maltose. In the case of lactose, we have glucose plus galactose. In the case of sucrose, we have glucose plus one molecule of fructose. This is how it has been combined and formed the disaccharides. Coming to the trisaccharides, raffinose is there. Glucose plus fructose plus galactose. These are the three monosaccharides combined in the case of raffinose. Tetrasaccharides is having stachyose is an example where we have four monosaccharides made up of two galactose molecules plus one glucose molecules and one fructose molecules. In the case of pentosaccharides, we have five monosaccharides. Its called example is verbacose. So we have three galactose molecules plus one glucose and one fructose. So based on the combination of the monosaccharides, again the oligosaccharides are classified into 2, 3, 4 and 5. This is how the oligosaccharides have been classified. So next one is polysaccharide classification. So as we know, if you contain more than 10 sugar, then it is considered as a polysaccharide. And of course, they have the high molecular weight and they are not sparingly soluble in water, just like the oligosaccharide and the monosaccharides. And they have another term called glycans. Glycans means otherwise it's called polysaccharides. And these polysaccharides will be either a linear type or in a branch type structure. And they are not sweet and they don't exhibit any properties of aldehyde or keto group because already they are combined and form the glycosidic bond. So in this form it will be utilized. So coming to the polysaccharides, polysaccharides are of two types, homosaccharides and heteropolysaccharides. Homo means the sugar which is framed to attached in a linear form or in the branched one, it belongs to a same type. For example, in the case of starch, all the monosaccharides belongs to glucose type. Even glycogen is also belong to the glucose. The glucose are combined and form the glycogen structure. Dextrin is a derived form from the starch or the glycogen. So this is a little bit lower than the structure compared to the starch. That's what it means, the homopolysaccharides. Coming to heteropolysaccharides means it is containing more than one type of sugar. Say for example, it may contain glucose, galactose, manure, and even a derived form like N-acetyl glucosamine, N-galactosamine. Like that, so many other derived forms of monosaccharides are also attached in the case of heteropolysaccharides. Examples which is considered under the heteropolysaccharides are belong to type of agar and pectins and glycosaccharides. So these are the examples and the classifications which is coming under the polysaccharides. So this is a video we are giving. We have an idea about that how a carbohydrate can be classified into monosaccharides and then oligosaccharides and polysaccharides, and the examples based on the type of the sugars attached and the glycosidic bond it forms and the nature of the functional group it is attached. So that's all in today's video. Thank you, students.